And a very good morning to you. Welcome along to Monday morning's Off the Ball AM. We're here with you until we stop talking about sport, which is probably going to be around about 9:30 this morning. As ever, if you want to get in touch, drop us a comment at Off the Ball AM on Twitter or on youtube.com/Off the Ball. We look and read all of those comments, even the disgusting ones. A very good morning to you, Eoin.
Good morning, Ger.
So you are the resident equivalent of an English football fan who is basically celebrating an All-Ireland win after the epic performance of Kerry against top quality opposition on Saturday night.
Yeah, Gaelic football is definitely coming home at the end of this year, no question about it. You may as well forget about everything else. You can write off everything else because Kerry are going to win the All-Ireland year. It's an absolute slap-bang fact.
They were pretty good.
They were, in fairness... Come
on, they were pretty good. You're excited.
I'm unbelievably excited. I think, in fairness, without sounding too cocky right now, I don't think...
No, go on.
I don't think there was any arguments other than the fact that Kerry are the best challenge to Dublin this year. There is no question about that. There is nothing you can say from a Mayo perspective, nothing you can say from a Donegal perspective.
They're much better than that. They've got the most exciting forward line in the country.
And I'm genuinely thinking at this point that 6 or 7 Kerry players will get into the Dublin team. 6 or 7, it is that close right now. There is that much parity. It is the only thing that is different now is just the experience that Dublin have in terms of seeing out very, very close games. And this Kerry team obviously hasn't had that experience yet. Maybe they'll be amazing in those situations. Maybe like from the likes, when you look at somebody like Sean O'Shea and the way he manages to see space, for example, the way he manages to pick out a pass, the way he manages to always make the correct decision, would lead me to believe that he's got the mental capacity to be very, very strong in clutch situations when he is needed to be clutch. Of course, we're not going to see that for quite some time. Well, we might need it against Galway in a couple of weeks' time. But the other 2 Super 8 games, who knows how the draw will go this morning? Who knows how the round 4 qualifiers draw will go? And if Kerry manage to rack up a couple of close games and a couple of victories, then I would say that Kerry are going to win the All-Ireland.
I was butting in a conversation between Mick Foley of the Sunday Times and Paul Howard on Twitter about how they kind of don't really want too many of the good teams to go out of the World Cup just yet. And I was like, well, maybe one of them, it would be okay if one of them fails and gets... And then, actually, over the course of the weekend, I realised that I wouldn't mind, I don't even know if this can happen, but like Colombia, Croatia, Belgium and somebody else making the Final Four and it being the weirdest tournament of all time. I am the complete opposite. Well, that would also, that might sicken me a little bit. But anyway, with the Super 8s, I kind of now want all the balls to be hot this morning when the draw is made. I want
definitely.
The hot balls are the good teams and that's a bit icy. Oh, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. Look at the Super 8s.
Without question, completely agree with you on that. When word was filtering through to Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Saturday that Mayo might be in a bit of trouble, everybody was like, oh no, we don't want Mayo. As much as, I kind of have a little bit of disdain for Mayo and their fans, I really wanted them not to get knocked out.
Oh, because you want them down in Killarney.
That'd be amazing. Or in Castlebar. That'd be a fantastic occasion.
Which would be better? Beating them in Castlebar or beating them in Killarney?
There was talks over the weekend of if Mayo were coming to Killarney that we'd give them a taste of their own medicine with our own incident in Castlebar earlier in the year. That's the plan. That's on the agenda. Beating them in Killarney would be better, but it would be just a special occasion. In fairness, it would be great to have Mayo fans down in Killarney, and they would never escape.
Is this the birth of hooliganism in the GAA? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. It's
your firm meeting their firm in outside.
We've been training in the Killarney National Park in the woods. We've been dosed up on anabolic steroids, and we're ready to fight on the streets of Killarney.
Too many people are going to take that seriously, and they'll be like, "What?" We should talk about some of the GAA stuff from the weekend. We're going to do it in much more detail with Enda McGinley a little bit later on because the draw is going to be made around about 8:30 and we'll have immediate reaction to that. That tip game, obviously you were at the Páirc Uí Chaoimh, so you probably didn't get to see too much of it, but Tip gave it to them until Mayo scores this fluky goal and then they just collapsed a little bit. And for the first 15 minutes, Mayo were sensational and then they went away for a good half an hour.
Yeah.
It was the stereotypical qualifiers performance, except with a bit of burn-off at the end from Mayo.
Well, that's the thing. How earlier will that burn-off point come over the next couple of weeks? And the whole idea, of the consecutive weeks, it's really weighted in the people who've gone further in the Provincial Championship's favour at this point.
Because of squad depth and injuries and stuff.
But you also don't have this dreaded 6 or 7 day turnaround anymore, which you often had where you lose your Provincial final and then the very next week, round 4 of the qualifiers would be on. Like, we haven't even had the draw for round 3 of the qualifiers yet. So
Cork, Fermanagh, going to be completely brutalised by their experience. Roscommon, you give a chance against pretty much anybody who are left in the qualifiers, and Laois is a good draw for whoever else is on that side. So
Roscommon are probably going to be the only team that'll win their round 4 match. Of course, it all depends on the draw, but they're the most likely to win. I wouldn't be surprised if all 4 of them crash out in round 4. But there is a better chance than in previous years.
Meath and Monaghan would be a great 4 to get through to the Super 8. Suddenly the Super 8 would look lit.
Yes. Tyrone, did he say them?
Yeah.
Roscommon, Monaghan, Tyrone and Mayo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you want. They're the 4 you want. There will be some epic matchups in that perspective. But like, if Mayo make it all the way through, the thing is, you'll have it'll be Kerry against Mayo or Dublin against Mayo at some point in the Super 8. So straight away there's amazing fixtures there. That's why we need the teams to stay in this thing. That's why the GAA needs these teams to stay in the thing as well. For once, the media and the GAA has a common cause here. We all want the best outcome here. We all want the big teams to survive. We all want the balls to be hot this morning, so to speak. Not literally, but if it turned out that way, if they were all a similar temperature, and it turned out to be a good draw for the neutral, then I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining whatsoever. But what you really want is for Mayo to be in the Kerry and Galway side of the draw, because that way you'll get them at a provincial ground.
Okay, let's bring in the newspaper headlines.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
We're going to horse through these this morning and get to the rugby. Andy Dunne is standing outside, so we'll get to him in just a minute. The Irish Times this morning. Ireland wrestle victory to wrap up season of success, and too early to say 3 Lions are ready to roar all the way to Moscow. That's the headline over Ken Early's piece there. And the Examiner, it's the 4 tops, Kerry, Dublin and Donegal cruise into the Super 8s with Galway. Paul Ganey, Footballer of the Year material at the moment. Ryan McHugh, Footballer of the Year material at the moment. He was the good outside bet ahead of the Super 8. Should have made that at that point. Not fit for purpose. This is the headline on the front of the Indo this morning. They're dead right. It's a complete non-event at this point. Dick Clerkin, hard to judge Donegal with such poor quality in Ulster. Billy Keane, will this year be remembered as the year the Munster Football Championship was condemned? So that's 3 football championships being condemned in the back of the Indo. Fair play to them, they're going for it this morning. They've also got rugby coverage and Jamie Carragher. England dare to believe. Dublin East to another title, and there's a picture of the Dubs in front of the hill. I'm amazed that many people stayed on the hill to celebrate. Nice day, I suppose, and you don't really get to see the Dubs that often, although hopefully that'll change over the next couple of weeks. Kane, England can win the Cup. That'll be a much bigger story in the UK version, I suspect, of this. And then this story here, Contepomi and Leinster link. This came through late last night. We'll get Andy Dunne's thoughts on that in a moment. Felipe Contepomi is going to replace Gervin Dempsey. And the Racing Post, Royal Ascot's review. Harry Angel not certain to defend his July Cup title after injury. And roaring success. 3 Lions cut for World Cup glory after hammering Panama. Overreaction Monday. We gotta love it.
On the back page of the Herald this morning, it's Love 8. But Bernard may not make it back until All-Ireland semi-final. Jury still out on England bid. Southgate has it right so far, says John Giles as well, on the back page of the Evening Herald. On the back of the Mirror, it is Great 8. Dublin are super, but Gavin has problems with new Senior Football Championship format. Well, Southgate says, I wouldn't swap Harry. On the back page of the Irish Daily Star then, it is Super 8, Leinster landmark for Dubs. You've got Stephen Cluxon there inset, watching with Chris Farrell, Dublin's performance video analyst. And Yes We Kane, says the top of Ian Murtagh's story here. Harry Kane believing, and England believing this morning after their 6-1 hammering over Panama yesterday afternoon. On the back page of the Sun, it is the Leinster final. Keeper's first start was a match made in Evan Comerford coming in for Stephen Cluxon. The first time Stephen Cluxon hadn't played any part in or hadn't started the championship match, I should say, since 2004. Also, actually, on the front page of the Sun, we've got this exclusive from Barry Moore and Captain Slamtastic, Mick Savage's Roy Rant. Why can't he get over it? Former agent of Mick McCarthy, current agent?
Liam Gaskin, it's not actually Mick McCarthy savaging Roy Keane. It's not really a response. It's, this is one of those stories that is actually really over. It was just that Roy Keane was asked during a World Cup podcast by ITV what happened inside Pan. He told everybody exactly the same thing he's told everybody every time he's been asked about it since 2002. And, I think we can all move on, right?
It's a little bit fresher over in the UK though, right?
Like, oh, you didn't play in a World Cup. Did anybody ever ask you about this? Yes, I say the same thing every time.
On the back page of The Guardian, and here we go, some of the UK back pages. We'll show you all the UK back pages later on in the show, but just two for the time being. Perfect harmony, Southgate hails team spirit as Kane sends young guns storming into last 16. And finally, the front page of the Daily Telegraph sports section says, Dare to Dream. Pretty simple headline there, with all their columnists thinking that potentially it is time to dream for England. Potentially they can go all the way, and potentially football is navigating its way back to its own homestead.
Its roots. One quick question for you. Why the hell should England not be getting carried away after a dominant performance like that, where one of the best strikers in the world has scored a hat-trick, has his eye in, the team's playing really well, they're playing a brilliant, vibrant, attacking form of football, and they don't have any of the fears and shit around them that all the other teams have had basically since 1996. They should be getting carried away. It's the point of a World Cup. You're getting as carried away as you are about Kerry. Why not? That's the right thing to do.
100%. There's nothing like the excitement of it. The thing is now, do they try and not win against Belgium or try and lose against Belgium for the sake of getting an easier draw? It's looking like it could potentially be an evasion of Germany, Brazil if they finish second in their group. There'll be more on that as the week kind of pans out and as it becomes a little bit clearer. Obviously,
I'm just going to rest some players, you know.
Just accidentally. It's kind of like the version of the hot balls to a certain extent, but a little bit more deliberate, a little bit less cagey, a little bit less kind of underhanded when it comes to the tactical manoeuvres. England should finish second in their group. It's as simple as that.
We're England. We don't fit now, but anyway, what? Right, let's move on. Dublin manager Jim Gavin was pretty happy to claim an 8th successive Leinster title, and he thinks John Small's red card was more clumsy than malicious.
Jim, congratulations. 8th title in a row. You must be very happy.
Yeah, we're delighted with it. Delighted to win the Leinster title again. It means a lot to us. We're very proud Leinster men, and I think it was a really good game. With a lot of opportunities the first half, didn't convert, but you got to pay the respect to Laois and the performance they put in. Then we got a man sent off, I think around 57, 58 minutes, and my boys rolled up the sleeve and closed the game out well. But from the positive perspective at half time, we were creating lots of chances, lots of goal chances, lots of chances for points, and just didn't take them. And you'll have days like that, but all credit to the players, that they're very focused, and it didn't change much up at half time. I think we probably created as much, if you look back on the statistics of the game, as many scoring opportunities in the second half as the first. Just difference was, I think we had our first wide in the 71st minute of the game. That made the 36th minute of that half, if that makes sense. And that was probably the difference, how clinical they were. But the guys just were very present, I thought, in the second half, and played each passage of play as best they could.
Your view on the red card, was it harsh?
I'm just off the pitch, so my initial thoughts were that was more clumsy than malicious. I thought John went for the ball. Be surprised looking back in the tapes if you don't see he made a contact with the ball, and that consistency that you want to see. I don't think there was any maliciousness in any Laois tackles as well, but maybe some over exuberance, and the referee let it go, and rightly so. And I thought John's one was probably something that might have been rough play, but surprised to see him get the red.
Yeah, so we'll come back to that a little bit later with Enda McGinley after the qualifier draw is made around about 8:30 this morning. In the meantime, Andy Dunne is here. How are you?
I'm good, Ger.
The greatest season in the history of Irish rugby. This is the best team of all time, and yet we're picking nits. We keep nitpicking.
We are nitpicking a bit. It's an unbelievable season. Without doubt, our greatest ever year. The nitpicking is potentially, it is legitimate on one ground only, that is the current style of play good enough to win a World Cup, and that's very nitpicky based on our history. But
that's what we're supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no point in us having this ambition to win quarterfinals. But let's, even if you go back and say Argentina played the way against us against whatever team we have now, and they still had that wide, and they were pegging it down the sides. Would this team beat that Argentina team?
I think this current team is a stronger side than the side that went out in 2015 and lost. It's the amount of work it takes for us to score is a worry. New Zealand were 21-14 up after 45 minutes against France. They'd scored 3 tries, but they'd been in the France 22 for about 3 minutes and 5 seconds, something like that.
Yeah.
So their economy in terms of how they use the ball, how clinical they are to finish, is very, very different, which means their energy levels are probably higher throughout the game. We're
killing ourselves.
Well, we're causing ourselves a huge amount of work in order to score, which is very difficult to defend, and nobody really had an answer to it.
Do we have more
Six
injuries
Nations.
than other teams because of it?
I don't know in terms of the stats, but I would imagine we've got a bit more just physical pain in the week post the game than other sides do, potentially. There's a hell of a lot of combat, there's a lot of impact, there's a lot of guys running directly into contact, and a lot of guys having to clear out rucks that could be slow if they weren't very aggressive at the ruck. So those are issues that potentially 18 months out from a World Cup could be tricky, but then again, if the players are well managed and they get breaks, it could be just that our style is so difficult to contain. It's so difficult. You have to match us physically, and most teams are not doing that at the moment.
One thing struck me about the criticism that Schmidt had received in the build-up to this for bringing over particularly the 9 and 10 and not giving the second and third string 9 and 10 this game time and this opportunity. What you have now in that group is the experience of being completely knackered and having to try and grind it out, which is the one thing that they will be able to all collectively draw back on in the World Cup in weeks 4, 5, 6 and maybe 7. Do you know, that's the benefit of that. Like, that's the one thing that you can't fake the World Cup, but this is as close to being able to fake it as you possibly can get. Yeah,
I think trying to replicate those conditions, you can't do it unless you're doing it at the coalface in a test match. And so, as physically drained as they were going into the Australian third test, they were able to somehow manage their way to a win. And we are like this clinical, mentally tough, resilient team, and we know how to win these. Essentially, it's not a World Cup game, but it was a test decider with a lot riding on it, and we were able to just somehow make that happen as a win. And that's, at times, is an intangible quality within a group, that ability that we've forgotten how to lose nearly, and it's a pity it's just 18 months away from a World Cup.
I think in a weird way as well, it helped that it wasn't a sweep, that you had the first defeat, and I think the coaching team, just listening to a few of the quotes over the last couple of days, learned a lot about how this group of players tick psychologically. Like Jordan Larmour saying that they got a real kick up the ass with Andy Farrell's quotes after the first test saying, what are you made of? We'll see what this team is made of, see if they can bounce back, and how disappointing that first test was. And I think Farrell and Schmidt will have learned how to manipulate the minds of these players a little bit more. How do they react if it comes down to a situation where they have had a disappointing start to the World Cup?
Yeah, I think they were quite a grumpy squad in general, both management and players, after that first test. There was a lot of question marks raised, which is tough to take, I suppose, as a group, having come out of a Grand Slam and European Cup and a Pro 14 and various successes. But as a group, to get questioned to the extent they got questioned after one loss, which was their only loss in the 2017-2018 season. But it shows the standards that they've set for themselves, that there was that level of niggle and aggression within the group about that loss. In terms of how Joe and Farrell and Greg Feek and the rest of them manipulate the team, I think the one huge development is the 32, or I think 31 or 32 out of the squad. Only one guy who went to Australia didn't get pitch time, who was Ross Byrne, and I'm sure they would have done it if the game was slightly less close. But to get that many guys coming in and competing for places is now going down the lines of what Jim Gavin is doing with the Dubs, what Cody did with Kilkenny, Fergie did it with Manchester United for years, has not picked the same starting team for consecutive matches. And it creates that level of competition in training, it creates a level of doubt even in key players. There are far less guys feeling very assured about their places than a year ago. I think there was a lot of comfort within the team in terms of who was really going to get selected for the big games. 44 now. James Ryan has now become undroppable. Yes. It's him, Furlong and the halfbacks. Yeah. And maybe Rob Kearney, but then Rob Kearney went off with 20 minutes to go and Larmour plucked a few from the sky, and it's like, shit. Yeah. You've probably got that lovely environment now in the professional era where, you know, the camera pans over to the subs bench who are clapping with delight, but deep down are head in hands thinking this guy's taking his opportunity, and you need that. I mean, most players are going to have a level of disquiet if they're, the guy they are working for and against to get into the same position starts having a blinder. You're not going to be over the moon, but they probably need that level of competition. It's the one thing that so chastened Joe Schmidt after the last World Cup, was that we didn't have strength and depth when we had that injury crisis. So to his great credit, he has absolutely addressed that. He's far less risk averse when it comes to his team selection than he used to be. In a perfect world, he'd become a little less risk averse in terms of how we play. Yeah. But like we said, are we nitpicking? Quite possibly. We're second in the world and we lost one game in the entire year. So
just in terms of specific, what's Joe Schmidt going to do with the captaincy, I wonder? Is it going to be a situation where Rory Best will still be undisputed captain come the World Cup? It seems like that might not be the case.
I'd be very surprised. Even on the back of the apparent fourth choice Herring coming in on the tour, who was a superb find. He wasn't on the radar in terms of starting international rugby before the Australian tour. Certainly wasn't on mine and within general media views. His line-out throwing was excellent, his contribution around the field. Scannell was excellent. Cronin had a very unfortunate tour, but we know what he can do around the field, and he was selected to start the third test. And I think the issue with Best is he's obviously got a level of respect and experience within the group and leadership that is hard to measure, but he is in danger of falling into that, the very lofty intellectual pundit who says he does the unseen work. Which can be, can mean a lot, but also at international level, the unseen work is what's the basics. You do your basics at international level, which is unseen. We need to do a bit more to be a starter and to be the captain. So I think it will put a bit of pressure on Best to potentially contribute more around the field, as well as his well kind of noted scrummaging abilities and his line out throwing.
And he needs to be rested, so he'll get very, they'll put him in for some of the bigger games, and Rob Herring will do really well while he's not playing, and then suddenly there'll be a selection dilemma, and that's how that happens really over the next 18 months. So,
well, the one thing is he's not short on leadership. He's not short on alternative captaincy options, and I would imagine the group are aware that between O'Mahony, Sexton, Stander, there's other options apart from Best.
I know you hate me, but you have to talk to me. It's an unusual captaincy style from Johnny Sexton.
Yes, yeah. He's
winning friends and influencing people.
Yes,
a little book for you. Just read that over the summer.
He's battling his own wills, I think, to try and curb his own enthusiasm, curb his grumpiness with referees. It was interesting to see Roy Keane with O'Neill on ITV during the World Cup. How Keane did I suppose, develop the point on his grumpiness towards referees, where he felt, retrospectively, he probably should have quietened it down, and only realised that towards the end of his career. It's hard to gauge. I mean, Johnny's a very aggressive, in-your-face type player, and if you try and take the edges off that, do you take that away from his game? So, but I think in terms of dealing with the ref, maybe a bit more diplomacy, but it's hard to do in the heat of battle.
Yeah, the Andy Durso, Roy Keane picture, I've just googled it there, and I can't bring it up to you, but that's Keane.
Yes.
Full, Johnny Sexton was the equivalent of that in rugby terms, where it's, hello sir, please may I have a word? It's like, So it'll be interesting to see what happens. While we're talking about out halves and Johnny Sexton, we'll come back to the Ireland thing in a moment. I want to get your thoughts on the fact that Felipe Contepomi might be about to join the backroom team at Leinster.
Yeah, I was very surprised to hear that. I would say pleasantly surprised. I think he's a very popular guy when he was there as a player. He was very popular with the playing squad, the management, and he clearly was so popular with the fans. He's about as opposite as he can get to Gervin, who's been the coach for the last few years. Gervin is very strategic. He's he's straight down the middle, and Felipe, you wouldn't know what you're going to get as a player when you played alongside him. I can only speculate to what his coaching style is, but if it's anything like how he plays, which was so unpredictable, it might prove for pretty exciting here with the Leinster backline. Yeah, I
hope they put him up for media every second week as well.
Yeah, I'd imagine he'd be more refreshing than the usual sound bites you get.
Yeah, because like I mean, we were talking about it before the show. Like he was kind of at the centrepiece of the Leinster-Munster rivalry before Leinster really were allowed to stand up for themselves and go, no, we have every right to be here. He was doing the thing to the Munster fans and you know, saying that they lacked a bit of class at various stages. Having taken an earful down, I think in Musgrave one time. It might not even have been Thomond. Maybe it was Thomond. I don't know, but certainly, I talking to Leinster fans over the weekend, there's like a genuine sense of, wow, this is amazing. Completely left field, because you know, obviously he's qualified as a doctor. There's a family medical practice in Buenos Aires. He's involved with Argentinian rugby, so you kind of feel like, well, that's gone. He's never coming back.
I never would have expected it, to be honest. But I think it shows that what Leo Cullen has is the capacity to surround himself with people who are arguably bigger characters, bigger personalities, which shows immense leadership on Leo's part. Nobody would have expected Lancaster to come in, and it's been a masterstroke from the Leinster management, and I think bringing in the likes of Felipe certainly is going to be warmly received within the Leinster fraternity, and I think it's going to be, I mean, professional sport needs colour, you know, it's pretty drab at times, particularly from an interview and media. Well,
like suddenly, you know, if the Pro 14 game against Zebre is the one coming up the weekend, and you send the message comes into everybody's inbox, Felipe's up to do media this week, people are going to show up.
Absolutely,
It's just like,
God knows what he'll say.
It makes a lot of sense.
I'm sure that's not the reason they've recruited
No,
him.
obviously not. But like, it certainly, like you bring the party, people want to pay attention to it, and it's like it's a really good move. It seems like. Yeah,
and I think we maybe you know, there are a lot of cliches there about the Latin spirit and all that. He's a huge competitor, and he will fit that drive that Lancaster brings, that Leo brings. That there's a deep rooted hardness and toughness. He was always a very hard trainer and consistent trainer. He was, unfortunately, got that knee injury in 2009, but prior to that was very much always present and available as a player, which again showed his resilience, and I think that's something which will come to the fore as a coach and will also suit that Leinster setup.
Yeah, it's a big opportunity for someone like Ross Byrne as well. You mentioned there that he was the only member of the touring party who didn't get game time down under, but he'll look at this and he's like, Johnny Sexton and Felipe Contepomi are both my allies now on a very specific level, day in, day out, which is hugely beneficial for them. It's just a complete compilation of some of the greats in terms of out-half training at the moment in Leinster.
Yeah, it's a huge plus for Ross Byrne. One can't help but think what Joey Carberry thinks about the appointment. I'm sure he would have liked to have been involved with Felipe as well. Very similar style player, actually. So.
A quick one from Seamus Bannon. There was a time I used to love watching #the All Blacks. That power, flair, skill level, it was a joy to watch. Nowadays they still have all that, but there's also a new level of refereeing, decision making in their favour that is so blatant it is borderline farcical. The test series against France will show a very easy win for New Zealand, but something needs to be done about the disgraceful refereeing in these games. How can any team compete against that? It seems to me, and I keep saying it, that they're refereed differently, the way big teams in all sports are refereed differently, but that there's some kind of disease at the moment where any 50-50 call always goes their way, where their physicality is completely illegal and doesn't get called, where them being offside doesn't get called. Now, a lot of people who know more about the game than I do said that the refereeing decision at the weekend was wrong, because there is a rule that says the referees need to be fair. There's also another rule that says unless you touch the ball or the team in possession of the ball, one of their players, that you can't call a scrum. So there was a bit of wiggle room from the referee on Saturday to allow the try. That
it's Mackenzie's.
Yeah. What did you make of it?
I had a different view until I heard Matt Williams on Saturday, and I recalled his own coaching advice. He said if the referee is in the way, you run at him, because there's always a space there, and he would have directed us to do that on regular occasions, and he brought it up on Saturday, which jogged my memory. I would have thought it was strategic. They ran towards that space, and as such it's within the rules, and the referee realised it and had to play on. I think as a general malaise in the last 3 to 4 weeks, seeing the New Zealand and Australia series, the tests, I think there's two much open to interpretation for referees within the rules. There's too much allowance for style within regions. That in the Super 14 we referee it this way, in the Pro 14 in Europe we referee it that way. That's got to be quashed out of the game, because it's now allowing the referee to be a focal point in the game when he ought to be the opposite. The best referees go unnoticed, unheard, unseen, and the game runs with a great sense of flow. It's become the total opposite in high-level rugby at the moment, where they are personalities, they are characters, and they are within their own right, but they don't need to be on the field. They need to referee the game quietly, assuredly, and consistently.
Andy McGinley clipped together 3 restarts, which were all kicked from Australia in the first 45, 50 minutes maybe of the game, and 3 times the ball goes to up. O'Mahony goes up and Falau is involved. They all look fairly similar. One, nothing happens. One ends up being talked about by the sighting commissioner afterwards, and one is a yellow card. And it's like, lads, if the first one's a yellow card, the second 2 don't happen. But if the first one's not a yellow card, then the last one's probably not a yellow card either. So we don't know what's going on here. That's the problem.
And my own view on that, it may not be the most welcomed one in Irish rugby, but my view is that Stander's lift, it wasn't as strong as it could have been, and there's a pivot. If you don't lift with both arms, you lift with one arm, and in mid-air, 8 feet off the ground, and you pivot, you're then at the mercy of gravity and everything else, bringing you back down. I mean, Bernard Foley's restarts were outstanding, and Falau's athleticism, the guy he's a gazelle, he has 7-8 foot in the air unassisted, and it shows how difficult it is to try and mark that. But I do think we're glossing over the fact that Sanders' lift was 3 times in a row. O'Mahony fell pretty heavily in a line out. If Stander was the lifter, he'd be heavily criticised by his forwards coach for not maintaining the lift in a strong position. It's a bit more isolated in a restart. So.
So that's something that Ireland can fix and not worry too much about the rules. It's less a rules issue.
I think so.
One last question for you then. Who is our backup 9, and what the hell do we do if Murray gets injured?
I'm fully convinced Luke McGrath is the second best scrum half in the country, but he wasn't on the tour. So it seems like Joe is the one who needs convincing more on that. I know obviously Luke had the ankle injury at the tail end of the European season and just didn't really get back to form. But in terms of his all-round contribution on the field, his running game, his box kicking and his defence are outstanding. It's his passing that's a little bit slower than Murray's, which is probably something we could take, given that the rest of his game is quite strong. I think a fit and hungry McGrath is currently our best second choice. Marmion isn't a bad option. Cooney isn't a bad option, but for me, there's quite a distance regardless of who we're going to pick.
Yeah, and you can't fix that in 18 months, really.
Well, in an ideal world, we're going to have
find an Irish qualified guy.
No, I wouldn't go down that road. I think we can.
Michael Bent.
Yeah, I would. I think we can stick with what we've got, and the guy who wins that race and gets second choice will deserve it, because there's going to be a lot of pressure on them. But in a perfect world, we'd have a par level replacement for every single player, but it's maybe in the case of Sexton and Murray, we just don't. We do at every other position, and maybe take it as positive. We've so many. All right, good stuff, Andy. Thanks very much. Cheers, Ger. It's the last time we'll see Andy for at least 3 weeks as the off season kicks in. Well, Leinster are back in pre-season training last week. I actually felt like crying for them. Oh God. All right, Kieran Cunningham and Anthony Moyles were on the pay-per-view yesterday with Joe talking about the Dubs finances. Have a look.
In 2004, in fact, Dublin started putting money into all these games officers, and it's continued over the last 15 years or so. Willfully or otherwise, it does ignore the fact that they were given more money than everybody else by a shocking distance, really. I just double checked again, because every time I go to name the figure off the top of my head, I think, oh, that can't be right. And then you realise it's true. So between 2007 and 17, Dublin...
You're going to get hammered by the Hill 16 Army on Twitter over this now, you know that. Hill 16 Army, I mean, all of them with the Dublin crest as their Twitter picture. They don't listen to reason. Like, they think this is a personal attack on them, and it's not really. Well, I've seen during the week, just a quick sidebar, because I brought up, it looks likely that Dublin will be given 2 home games in the Super 8s, but everyone else get one. That's right, yeah.
So it brought us up to James Horan wrote a column of the week, and I just had a line from James at home, giving it a plug on Twitter, and people straight away, you're always anti-Dublin, anti-Dublin. No. How is it anti-Dublin pointing out something that's blatantly unfair? And it's blatantly unfair.
Look, for the Dublin fans who are about to criticise, of this situation, Tom Ryan, then the GAA's Director of Finance, said, this is a tricky one. It's something we've been giving a fair bit of thought to. Will it happen next year, he was asked. The short answer is no. So even the GAA are saying this isn't right. So between 07 and 17, Dublin got, for coaching and games development, 16.6 million.
So nearly $1 million a year.
So 16.6 million. Cork, second on the list in terms of funding. And by the way, Cork have 260 clubs, Dublin have 134. So Cork have more clubs than anybody. So Dublin got 16.6 million over 10 years. Cork, number 2 in the country, got 1.1 million.
Ah, wow.
So Mayo got 500,000 to Dublin's 16.6 million. Mayo got 500,000, the second best team of the last decade.
Well, that's why I think one of the reasons I give Mayo enormous credit for the resources they have and having half their squad based in Dublin.
Yeah, so
having to train 2 bases, etc.
When people say, like, because quite often the Hill 16 argument are all these lads like, well, you know what, like we spent the money on wisely. Well, like, it's not like there's a transfer market. You can't go out and buy the Gooch for 15 million. No. What else are you going to spend it on except games, promotion and coaching?
All right, we are in the middle of a very busy show today. We're going to be talking about the draw for the qualifiers, which is going to be made in about 10 minutes' time. We'll be talking about the potential Super 8 groupings after that, because we'll know largely what the likely makeup of the Super 8 is going to be. It is an interesting point with the Dubs having 2 games in Croker. Like, if they don't have 2 games in Croker, some team has no away game. Mm-hmm. So there's like a little bit of a yeah.
The point, I guess, is that some team won't get the opportunity to play in Croke Park.
No, to give everybody. So if everybody has to have the opportunity to play in Croke Park, then some team has no away match. So
then they won't go to Croke Park to play Dublin away.
Yeah, they'll go to a neutral venue.
Yeah,
is that a problem? If you qualify because you draw with Dublin in Tullamore and you're Galway, or say you haven't played them already in Croker, it's like that's unfair for them. Is it more unfair to have Dublin play at home than?
Well, it
probably is.
It is, but it's also taking the problem, and the solution is the same problem.
It's a lesser variant of the problem.
Yeah, it is for sure.
They make less money.
Like, considering Dublin will have the semi-final and final in their own patch as well.
Yeah, exactly.
That has to be taken into account.
Yeah. All right. Is there music? There is. What's that? The Russian dolls are coming out. How are you, John?
Ger and Eoin, good morning.
Wow. Where is that?
It's the People's Fountain of Friendship in Vidin-Ha, which is in English kind of a cultural park. It's kind of an exhibition park in Moscow, up near the Botanical Gardens. And this was built behind me in 1954 to kind of show the friendship with all the Soviet republics, a lot of which don't exist anymore, like Lithuania and Latvia, but it's still a beautiful sculpture. And I'm in this park, which is at its height. It was built in the 30s by the Stalin regime. And at its height had 11 million visitors a year. So had agricultural fairs, space fairs, amazing buildings here, and I think they're going to try and make it a bit of a hub in Moscow over the coming years.
All right, cool. So you're back in Moscow?
Yes, got the overnight train. A bit like Metallica's Enter Sandman. Sleep with one eye open, holding your pillow tight. But no, it's no. I'm only joking. It was it was grand, and that was after watching England trans Panama yesterday by 6-1.
Okay, we'll definitely talk about the football in 1 minute, but tell us a bit more about this train. What was it like? Is it like a double decker? Is it jammed? Is it full of English fans singing? What was it like?
No English fans really, and very few English fans really there yesterday in comparison to what you would think. The train is like, I thought it was like, I don't know if you've ever been to Holland, where they have these double-decker trains where you actually go upstairs and sit upstairs, and that's what I thought I was getting when I was booking it, but actually it's a sleeper train. So I remember the James Bond, when you'd be in the sleeper train and be attacked by Jaws back in the day, if you remember those movies. Richard Keel. But yeah, you're in a very cramped sleeper compartment, and you pull the bunks down, so it's four to a compartment. So I was with a few foreign journalists, but yeah, I was on the top bunk. And yeah, you're trying to not fall out of the thing, and that's what we tried to do. And obviously, it's comfortable enough to be fair. And I got a bit of shut eye, so a bit of half sleep as I would. Daniel McDonald, to be fair to him, was in the compartment next to me, so I just said, Daniel, I'll turn off my phone. You wake me up, make sure I don't end up in St. Petersburg. So luckily we got here,
Very good. Okay, so let's talk about the football then, because predictably the English media have gone into overdrive, and I was making the point a little bit earlier on. Why shouldn't they? Like, there's so few opportunities for sports fans to actually legitimately believe that something miraculous might happen for their team. That brief window, when it's open, you should fly through it. And who cares what happens next? They've got this Go on.
Would we do the same?
Yes.
We do the same? Didn't we do the same after the Sweden game at the Euros?
Yes.
When we drew. So England have not a lot of to shout about probably since the Sven days. Probably since the Sven days when they were getting to quarterfinals of tournaments and then blowing it on penalties. So, look, I think they're very nice. I think Gareth Southgate's done an amazing job in terms of the messaging. And they're just seen as a young team with a great team spirit. So I'm all for it. And they've got players who are playing well. Harry Kane, not a lot of teams, like Germany don't have a striker like Harry Kane in their team. There's, like, whatever about the facile nature of the opposition yesterday, that penalty, first penalty, was rifled into the back of the net with conviction. He scored now 18 goals in 26 appearances for England, and he's flying. And momentum is a great thing, and I think a lot of tournaments that are won through momentum. And I think a lot of teams like Argentina have got no momentum from the get-go in this World Cup. I suppose the real question is, lads, we played exactly half the matches now. 32 games, we've had 85 goals, no scoreless draws, which is great about the World Cup. Every game we've had a goal. But I suppose I'm baffled as much as anybody else. I've no idea who's going to win this World Cup. Of course, you have your tips and your fancies. I fancy Brazil. But I still don't know, and I still don't think people even know how well England are going to do. Are they going to come unstuck when they actually meet a real team in the last 16, be it Colombia or Senegal or Japan? Or are they going to ride this wave of momentum and go further than people might have thought at the outset?
Just on Southgate, John, like a lot of people we've been talking about it all tournaments, the positive mentality that he's created and the positive environment around the squad. But does that mean he's not getting the credit he deserves as a coach? I mean, 4 of the 11 corners they've had in this year's World Cup have resulted in goals. That would suggest, even just on the set pieces alone, that he's coached them to the nth degree, that they're very well organised, that Gareth Southgate really, as a tactician, is a very, very bright mind.
But he knows what he wants to do. I think that's the first thing about tactics. He knows what he wants to do with his team. And then it's just a case of which personnel fit into the structure. The structure is 3-5-2. The structure is playing football with your feet, so from Pickford out, Stones, good footballing player, and giving young players like Lingard, Loftus-Cheek confidence. So yeah, I think that's a very fair point, Owen. I suppose the Southgate's career has been limited. Middlesbrough didn't really work out for him, but maybe that was a chalice that was too poisoned anyway. Done well with the underage teams, but they're very hard. It's very hard to judge how that will translate. Of course, he was a bit of an accidental president, wasn't he? The fact that Sam Allardyce only lasted 67 days, but he's done everything right, and I think it is a fair point that. But I suppose, has he been tested tactically? And he won't get tested. The first test will come against Belgium in Kaliningrad on Thursday. And as Jamie Carragher rightly points out, I think in an article today, they need to almost treat it like a last 16 game. They're ahead of Belgium. They've scored exactly and conceded the amount of same goals, 8 scored and 2 conceded, both countries. England are leading the group on the fact that they've had less yellow cards. But I think England need to approach the game with the same attitude. Let's go and try and win the game. And who knows how the chips will fall in terms of the other groups. Germany might end up topping the group after all if Sweden beat Mexico and Germany hammer South Korea. And Brazil are not guaranteed, even though they're leading that group now, that tight group with Serbia and Switzerland, to lead that group. So sometimes you can be too clever in these things, and I think Southgate's message will be to just drive it on.
Well, they'll know those games you're talking about are the Wednesday and England are the Thursday, I think. So
that's right. They will know. Yes.
What would you do if you knew that you have Brazil and Germany on one side and you've got Poland, well, obviously not Poland, but Senegal, Japan on the other? I mean, I'm tempted at that stage to go, look, we've got a really big squad. It's important that everybody gets a bit of game time. Off you go, lads. And if you win, you win. If you don't, who cares?
You never stop a horse, lads. You never stop a horse. So the horse knows if you stop it. So that's my kind of an old John Duggan saying. So no, I if it was me, and as a football fan, momentum is huge. Momentum is huge, and I think they need to test themselves against Belgium. I don't know what Martinez is going to do. like he was coming out with these pronouncements that he's going to arrest Lukaku, who's got an ankle knock. Eden Hazard's got a calf problem, but it's very, very minor. Dries Mertens has got an ankle problem. I suppose he wants to try at the likes of Company and Vermaelen, who haven't started Vermaelen. But it is it's a bit of a dead rubber, but I think you have to ride the wave, and you have to just, if you're going to win the World Cup, you're going to need to be the best teams anyway, the Brazils, the Germanys. So I don't think, as we saw last night, Colombia are now resurgent. They'd fancy their chances against Senegal, I think. And Senegal, I've seen them, and they're a tricky team to play. So there's no guarantee that either England or Belgium are going to just walk through this last 16 anyway.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And also, Sam Wallace is in the Daily Telegraph today makes a very valid point as well. When you mention momentum, that they've actually got evidence of this going badly against them in 2016, where Roy Hodgson rested a load of players for their last group game against Slovakia, drew 0-0. And of course, we know what happened in the next game against Iceland when the momentum was stalled somewhat.
Well, I mean, he's got the chance to put Marcus Rashford in there now. He didn't play at all yesterday, didn't even come off the bench. Vardy and Fabian Delph did. So he's got a chance now to maybe rest Raheem Sterling, play Rashford in behind Harry Kane, see how that works. Maybe take Kane off as he did after an hour and put Vardy on. So maybe put Gary Cahill into the team. So he's got options. He's got options. He doesn't need to change the whole team. He might change 3 or 4 players, but I don't think that will be detrimental to their chances in Kaliningrad. But I'm all with the rainbow of England, and I don't know how crazy it's gone over there, but I mean, in terms of the fans here yesterday, there was about 4,000 or 5,000 of them, all in good spirits. Lots of neutral Russian fans actually, shouting "Russia, Russia" at times, and a few whistles from the English fans. But what was most, it got a bit annoying that every time England scored, they played the Lightning Seeds "Football's Coming Home." So I heard that about 7 times. I heard it 6 times for the goals, and I heard it at the end. So they're almost trying to make it like a home atmosphere for England, and it seemed to work a bit yesterday.
Yeah. How has that whole England-Russia relationship been so far? Almost, apart from those clowns in the pub doing the Nazi salute, there's been no real stories about English fans getting in trouble or any violence against them that I've seen.
No, and I think that the Russian hospitality here has been exceptional. They're on their best behaviour. You know, maybe they don't need to be on their best behaviour because they're nice people in the first place. But the organisation of this World Cup has been top-notch, absolutely superb. And there is, as I've said before, a significant police presence. I mean, I was pretty vigorously searched yesterday, throwing my laundry all over the floor and everything. It's pretty embarrassing, but it was. And then they were quizzing me on what a selfie stick was. But the army were in here on Saturday night in Nizhny Novgorod, where I've just come back from. I just get the sense from anybody, first of all, if people are friendly to you and if they're welcoming you with open arms, you're going to go, that's great, I'm going to have a good time then. If they're giving you the cold shoulder, you might retreat from that a bit. But there's been a really warm welcome in Volgograd and yesterday for the England fans with the Russians. But also, the second thing I would say is the presence of the police and the different types of police and they're in different uniforms. Like you got the plain clothes, and then you got your kind of ordinary police, and then you got like guys in kind of combat kind of gear who are kind of, I think, a more military style police. You don't want to get into trouble here. You just don't want to get into trouble. A policeman came over to me the other day and said, I was like wandering around with my Google Maps because you have to go under a lot of kind of roads here. You can't just cross roads and jaywalk. You have to go under tunnels that don't really have pedestrian crossings. And I was kind of dazed and confused. And he just came over to me and I was going, what's he going to ask me here? Is he going to ask my papers or anything else? And he just said to me, when Google Translate, he says, can I help you? And I said, thank you. And then they walked me over to the next part of the place I needed to go. So, look, I don't expect any issues. Kaliningrad is more near Poland than Russia, but I don't expect any issues in the tournament.
What do you like from what you're seeing in terms of the football then, before we let you go here? We were saying a little bit earlier on that, you know, traditionally you want the superpowers to make the last 8 semi-finals and final, because otherwise it might feel like it's some kind of weird anachronistic World Cup. But having seen Colombia, having seen Croatia, I'd love to see Colombia, Croatia, Belgium and somebody else making up the latter stages of this tournament in a way that, you know, just to blow some freshness through the whole thing.
Well, I said, I think the other day, that I wondered if this was the Trump or Brexit World Cup, in that we have not a team lacking in quality that wins, but it's just in terms of a team of novelty that comes out, like Croatia, like you say, like Mexico. I think what we're looking for, Ger and Eoin, is a balance. And I think my favourite moment of the World Cup so far has been Toni Kroos. That was absolutely fantastic. That was an on-the-line moment. Your World Cup, the humiliation of being world champions and going out of the group stage for the first time, potentially, I think it would have been a done deal since 1938. It's all on the line, and he puts it in the corner of the net with that free kick. Oh, I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And it was the hallmark of champions. I think that makes Germany very dangerous if they can sort out their issues. Obviously, there's a bit of stagnation there, but Lowe is now performing surgery. That, for me, was the moment. After Ronaldo, that was the moment. Ronaldo was the first moment. The second moment was Kroos. And then on the other side, you have your moments like Mexico, which was a great story when they beat Germany. So I think you're right. I don't think I would have wanted to see Germany out of the competition. But I don't want to see a lopsided balance. I think what we want to see is a balance. I'm enjoying the unpredictability of it. I think that's the biggest thing I'm enjoying so far, is the unpredictability. I'm looking forward to seeing Brazil this week as well.
You watched that game in a fan park. Was that your first time you kind of seen one of those in full operation?
Yeah, it was a FIFA Fan Fest, very well organised again. The locals in Nizhny Novgorod really were interested in it. I met a taxi driver the other day. He was just so happy to be talking to foreign nationals at a World Cup. He had a Sweden jersey on. When I said I was from Ireland, he just started shouting, "Whiskey, whiskey." And I started shouting, "Vodka, vodka," back at him. And he was looking for a souvenir, and then he saw me later and he just started shouting. And I just thought it was a beautiful thing that he's in a closed city 30 years ago, a former communist city that was closed, that these people, the Panamanians were fantastic. They scored their first goal at the World Cup finals yesterday. They're here for a good time, and they were just brilliant, and they were great in that fan fest. They were great, jumping around and singing their songs. So, but a lot of Russians watching it. It's a completely new thing for them, and it's like, I suppose, it's like Euro 2020. If we didn't qualify for Euro 2020, of course we want to be at the Aviva seeing these teams playing. So I think you've got a lot of that, and I expect now to see a significant Russian presence today when they play Uruguay at 5 o'clock to see who tops Group A.
John, great stuff. Enjoy the rest of it. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Ger. Thanks, Eoin.
John Duggan giving us some thoughts there from Moscow. Nice park.
Yeah, it is nice. Uruguay against Russia today, 3 o'clock Irish time, obviously, in the Samara Arena. That's kind of the point where we start to realise, is it going to be Russia against Portugal? Is it going to be Russia against Spain? Who the hell knows? Because it could also change dramatically in Group B, were Iran to cause a shock of all shocks against Portugal in the Mordovia Arena later on. But that's not going to happen, really, is it? Could it?
Which?
Iran beating Portugal?
I don't think so. No, because then they'd be knocking them out.
Well, they would, without question, yeah. There is a possibility that if Iran draw at Portugal, that they do go through, but you would need Morocco to beat
Kyrgios
Spain.
knocking Portugal out, having been sacked by Portugal.
Yeah, the merciless revenge, but then again, Ronaldo doesn't like Kyrgios himself, does he? So
that stuff happens in football, though, sometimes, doesn't it? Or you do get your, like...
The bizarre sort of it could be another bizarre event. Maybe Russia get beaten by Uruguay. Who knows? Would that be the shock of the night? The greatest football team we've ever seen getting beaten by Uruguay.
Yes. Anybody who beats Russia now, I'm shocked.
Yeah, well, I genuinely am. I think Russia are getting to the quarterfinals at this point. I think they're going to beat Portugal in the last 16, and I think we're going to see them in the quarterfinals against France.
It's Portugal or Spain if they top the group automatically.
Yeah, if they top their group, they get the second in Group B. Yeah.
And who do Uruguay get if they finish second?
Well, Spain or Portugal are finish the top of that group. Yeah.
Okay. All right, they're paired. They're paired the whole way through then. So this week you're paired. Okay, so tomorrow it's Australia, Peru, Denmark, France, Iceland, Croatia, Nigeria, Argentina.
Yeah, and then the quarter...
The last 16. These last 16 games are going to be good no matter who's in them.
Yeah, then the quarterfinals draw is basically every second group. So the winner of A against the winner of C, the winner of B against the winner of D, or the team that beats any of those named teams.
A, C, B, D.
Yeah, so it could be Russia against France, but it's probably going to be Portugal against France, isn't it? And then when you look at the B and D matchup, Spain will probably last and Croatia will probably last, which will probably be tie of the quarterfinals, Spain against Croatia.
Yeah, that'd be good. A lot of football being played there. Spain and Portugal both to win is an enhanced price of 2-1 for off-the-ball users. Go to offtheball.com/boilsports if you want to pick up that one, and more coming up on the football, the World Cup Daily Show at 12:30.
12:30 this afternoon on all our social channels. We'll be crossing back over to John Duggan. We'll be chatting to Leon Blanche of Boil Sports as well.
All right, we're going to get the draws made. Kildare Mayo, Clare Armagh, Leitrim, Monaghan, Cavan. Hot balls, how are you? We'll get the thoughts of Enda McGinley in just a minute. Here's Dave McIntyre getting the thoughts of Brian McGuigan after Donegal romped home in the Ulster football final on Sunday.
Yeah, comfortable win for Donegal today, beating Fermanagh by 12 points to win the Ulster title under Declan Bonner. Brian McGuigan was with us all afternoon. What were your main thoughts coming away from that game? And again, we had really hoped maybe than what our expected would be a lot closer.
Yeah, well, it's the first time we've actually seen Donegal live this year, and you can actually see the work that's going on around the field, not just on the television screen. So I was very impressed with them, the way they attacked, the way they defended, all over. Like the physicality, the fitness, especially in that heat, was impressive. Like, and Declan Bonner has created a team here with a nice mix of youthfulness and experience on the other side.
We didn't expect Donegal to be as dominant in the province as they have been. I know this bodes well for them going deeper into the championship. I mean, a team that's been relegated from Division 1, just that one win under the belt against Kildare, and yet into the summer months, the firm ground, their forwards are loving life. They look like a serious outfit.
Yeah, and they seem to be a team that's really enjoying their football. And I know in the past few years the defensive setup and maybe the enjoyment has been out of it a wee bit, and Bonner has revolutionised them in that respect. But the young lads have given them a new lease of life, like Owen Bangeller. I think at defence scored something like 2-5 from play, and Paddy McGrath even had a goal disallowed. Like, so they're getting the balance right from between their defence and their attack. And the big question is, are they up there with the Dublins? I think they might just be slightly behind, but they're definitely number 2.
Is the question maybe, and it's just merely a question because we haven't seen it being asked of them yet, defensively we're not quite sure where they are. If a really top class forward line that wins 50% of ball goes after them, tests them, do we know that they can pass that examination?
It's hard to know, because like Tyrone breezed through Ulster last year, and Donegal have to be wary of that, but they do have the benefit of the Super 8s, where they're going to get 3 games at least to get them ready for the semi-final. Tyrone's the biggest downfall was last year. They thought they were in a better place than they were, and the time they met Dublin, it was too late. Whereas if Donegal play a game and they're beating the first game of the Super 8s, it still means that they can qualify by winning their last 2 games. So it's all going to be good for the young lads who haven't experienced Croke Park, and it's a new experience for them that they're going to get 3 games in it.
And I guess that experience as well within the team. I mean, we talk about Donegal as being a youthful side, but they have a really good spine, don't they? These guys are All-Ireland medalists. They've got All-Ireland medalists on the sideline as well.
They do, and their leaders really do lead by example. Any time they need a lift, Michael Murphy's there to do it, Ray McHugh's there to do a certain play that gets the whole thing going again. And don't forget, their defence was solid enough for the day, and they still have Neil McGee to come in who's an experienced campaigner. But all over the pitch they're so impressive. Like even their goalie, the way he can find his man long or short. So if you go to push up on a short kickouts, he can find you long, and if you sit back, then he's going to find the short to keep possession.
And finally, a question for Mana, Brian. I guess what happened today shouldn't take away from what's been a brilliant season, promotion, and just a 6th provincial final in the county's history, but they still have one more crucial game to play. Where to for them? How much of a change, if anything, do you expect to see, and how Rory Gallagher is going to set his side up for another crack at getting into that Super 8 structure?
Yeah, well, they will be disappointed tonight, but they'll all have to go maybe take a night out tonight to look back on how well they've done this past two games, because where they're at the start of the year is definitely progression. How they go about the next match, I don't think they're going to change their style of play. I still do think that they'll go defensive, because you can't prepare all year for a certain way just to change it in a week. So they will go defensive the next day, and the goalposts maybe have changed, and the target was an Ulster title, but now it really has to be to reach the Super 8s to benefit them next year.
All right, that's Brian McGuigan speaking yesterday with Dave in the aftermath of the Ulster football final. Enda McGinley joins us this morning to talk to us about the qualifier draw and a bit about everything else that happened over the course of the weekend as well. So just to recap the qualifier draw, it's Kildare against Mayo, Clare against Armagh, Leitrim against Monaghan, and Cavan versus Tyrone. I have no idea where the Kildare-Mayo game will actually be played. We'll try and get potential venues for that in a moment. But first off, Enda, good morning to you. Tyrone have drawn Cavan away. It's not the worst draw, really, and yet I guess avoiding another Ulster opponent is always preferable for Ulster teams at this stage of the season.
Avoiding another Ulster opponent would be preferable, but avoiding one of them Division 1 teams is probably even more important. So Tyrone will be happy that they've avoided Kildare, Mayo. Obviously they couldn't get Monaghan, but Cavan were shocking against Down. How they got out of that game, to me, they just simply didn't deserve to get out of that game. And speaking to the Cavan man and Jonas yesterday, he was saying that the mood after was almost more like a defeat, where Down had Kevin Kiernan and Conor Harrison both black carded in the first half. Ryan Johnson, their main forward, was sent off, and Keelan Mooney went off injured early in the second half. And yet Cavan were still reliant on a horrible goalkeeping error and a dropped goal to actually get out in front of that game. So Cavan have issues. Then there was the brawl at the end of the Cavan match, which I'd imagine there's going to be suspensions coming from that. So yes, Cavan are an Ulster team and it'll be difficult, but that's a good draw from Tyrone.
Yeah, and how? So if it felt like a defeat in the aftermath of the Cavan game, what was the general consensus among the Tyrone fans after the Carlow game? Because it was kind of the perfect game for them in that there was a tough blanket defence for them to overcome. They did that, and then they cleaned the pipes in the last 15-20 minutes and started racking up a few scores and getting a bit of confidence coursing through the team again.
Yeah, look, playing Carlow, it's never going to be pretty. Tyrone playing Carlow certainly is not going to be pretty. But for Tyrone, it was a job well done. It's not an easy place to go down there. They've given plenty of top teams tough games over the years. They've obviously beat Kildare even this year. So for Tyrone, it was a job well done. It was a decent draw. It was a win that they would have expected. They wouldn't have achieved anything massive more. Richard Donnelly at full forward has had more game time and done well again against Carlow. So them wee changes that Mickey has started to instigate, it's sort of right through the National League and even now in the Championship, he's still changing that team to try and find the right balance. And so the more games he has, the better. And I think, like for them, again, them Division 1 teams and them qualifiers, looking at the 4 teams that's coming in from the provincial finals following heavy beatings for most of them, this was the last big banana skin. I think now Tyrone have a very clear route towards the Super 8.
Yeah, the one exception we think is kind of Roscommon. That's going to be a team where nobody really wants to draw them, but everybody else you're thinking, yeah, happy days.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody else would be thinking the likes of Cork took a heavy beating, the confidence isn't going to be good. Laois, any team that gets that beaten in Dublin in the Leinster final, have traditionally always struggled afterwards. And obviously Fermanagh, after so much hype for the Ulster final, and then a bad beating, they're going to just struggle to get on. And again, them teams coming in will be low of belief. And coming in against some of the big hitters in the game, that's going to be a big challenge. Roscommon is definitely the pick of them teams in terms of challenging, but at the same stage, any of them big teams, if they were faced with Roscommon to make the Super 8s, I think they would take that at the start of the year. So Roscommon certainly is by far the trickiest tie in that. But I would imagine any of them, the likes of Kildare, Monaghan, Mayo, Tyrone, would all fancy their chances if they come through this round. I think they would fancy their chances against Roscommon.
There is a big opportunity, though, for any of those provincial losers, because you look at that Clare versus Armagh match. I presume you're looking at the winner of that as the one potential route to get into the Super 8. And were it to be someone like Laois or Cork or Fermanagh, then achieving the Super 8s, I mean, it's going to be celebratory scenes for whoever do draw the winner of Clare versus Armagh. No disrespect to them, but it does mean a windfall. It does mean a day out in Croke Park, and it means a third game. It's an absolutely huge open door here for one of these provincial losers who've been widely written off, really, rightly so, over the past 48 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the way the game's worked out at the minute. At that top level, for me, there's 8 teams, and it's what we see in Division 1 time and time again, is that there is 8 teams, yet 2 of them have to go down, and you end up losing a fairly good team, and then a relatively a strong Division 2 side, but a weak Division 1 side, the likes of Cavan, the likes of Tipperary, the likes of Roscommon, them sort of middle-ranked teams, then they get a go at Division 1, but there is sort of Dublin, Kerry, Galway, Donegal, Mayo, Tyrone, Monaghan, and I would have to give Kildare that final slot. So, but one of them's not going to be in the Super 8, which means there's going to be that sort of middle tier team is going to make it, which is going to be brilliant for them, brilliant for their county. It'll be great scenes, and you would just hope that it can be competitive. But you would imagine, and it'll be interesting to see, this is new territory for all of us. Does getting into the Super 8 for that middle ranked team, does that bring them on, or does that damage them more? And only time will tell.
I can't tell if teams are actually getting better as the season goes on just from playing more football. Like, so you look at, say, Tipperary, and they chronically underperformed against Cork, and now we know Cork are no great shakes, and yet they played pretty well for 50, 53, 54, 55 minutes against Mayo. And then Mayo started to play really well. So, like, these games, it's very hard to draw a straight form line through any of them.
And it's a big discussion point, Ger, for the whole game. I think increasingly the whole top tier talk, or the splitting the game into 2 tiers, or does the likes of Fermanagh's win over Monaghan, or Laois's or Carlow's win this year? Does that merit sticking with a game that is so obviously imbalanced? Like, is Dublin getting any benefit, or supporters or followers of the game getting any benefit from watching the way Kerry and Dublin have walked through their provinces? I'm not convinced. The weaker counties would point to the likes of Fermanagh, the likes of Leith, the likes of Carlow this year, and say, like, just look at what is done for their counties and their supporters, and absolutely there's truth in that. But is there a progression? I think the Super 8 gives us a great chance to see, does a team that gets to mix it with the so-called big boys for a period of time, does that bring them on, or does it actually break them? Because if you get landed, say, with Dublin and Galway, and they go to town on you, and say somebody like Mayo or Tyrone or somebody like that, it's going to be a fairly unforgiving place out there. So it's all new ground, and I can't wait to see it. But for me, looking at the football championship so far and contrasting it with the hurling championship, you just wish we were getting more of the big games, the big teams playing each other more often. Yeah, in meaningful games, is absolutely, and it looks like it's actually a pretty easy fix to get to that point. You just have to win over some rather recalcitrant minds at the moment. I want to talk to you about Donegal, because obviously this was another opportunity for us to see them again up against a team who were going to put that bank of defence in front of the goals. And like, once you saw Donegal score an early goal, all of a sudden Fermanagh's game plan had to change, and like, they were never going to be able to come back because they were never set up to do that. So that was a killer instinct from Donegal, which maybe they won't get credit for because the game ends up being so one-sided and so easy for them. Yeah, absolutely. Like Donegal, I think anybody that knows the football looks at that Donegal team and just looks at the individual players and the way they play the game and realises there's serious quality there. So you can't take that away from them. I keep going back to, we were starting to really believe that last year about them. They had a decent league campaign, a couple of big wins early on in the championship, and then they ran into Tyrone and they got wiped off the pitch. Then their next game, the qualifiers, was against Galway, wiped off the pitch again. So the last time they came up against two big teams, they got wiped off the pitch, and then suddenly everybody at that stage was saying, them young fellas aren't actually up to that after all. But I was looking at their forward line yesterday in Cronus. You're talking about 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds, 23. Like, there's only 3 or else 4 of the team over the age of 24. They're an exceptionally young squad, and they are talented footballers. But the big tests were sort of waiting then for that team to produce a big game against a big test. It didn't arise yesterday from Fermanagh. You hit the nail on the head. Fermanagh were dependent on keeping that game tight. They were never going to rack up a big score because they just don't have that type of game plan. They're only ever going to get to maybe 11, 12, 13 points. So as soon as Donegal were hitting 1 and 2 goals, the game was over for Fermanagh. Donegal still set up quite defensively yesterday, in fairness. Those times in the game, Fermanagh had their full 15 back in their own half. Donegal, they were keeping one man up, Paddy McBrearty. Now, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of his knee injury, whether that's serious. That could have a major say on their likelihood to make a big impact. But Donegal cruised through yesterday. The same questions that were there at the start of the year are still there. The same facts are still there too. They have a serious quality side, a very exciting side, particularly up front. So we'll wait to see. But Paddy McBrearty's fitness and then the big game test is what we're waiting to see for Donegal.
I trust when you said that Donegal set up defensively, that's kind of positionally that obviously they've racked up 876 in the championship, 13 different scores yesterday. Like, what is the difference about this Donegal team from, say, the Jim McGuinness team? Because they're obviously scoring more regularly, it seems, under this team. There's a wider spread of scorers, while, as you pointed out, setting up in a defensive position. Like, what is the big tweak there? What is Declan Bonner doing with this team that's allowing them to be so free scoring?
They do pull loads back. Like there was frequently, particularly in the first 20 minutes yesterday, frequently they had 14 players back behind the ball. More often though, they are getting the higher quality forwards than probably Jim McGuinness had in his time. Out and out forwards, the likes of Cian Mulligan, the likes of Paddy McBrearty, the likes of Kieran Thompson, Langan, obviously Michael Murphy weighing in. Ryan McHugh is in the form of his life at the minute. He's just unstoppable. So they have serious attacking threat. How much different it is from the Jim McGuinness area. Before I've seen them yesterday, and I have seen them a couple of times this year, they did seem to be keeping more up the pitch. Now, whether they just done that to negate, because as many teams have learned, and as Dublin show again, whenever a team comes up a blanket defence, you almost have to mirror them in a certain way. So I'm not sure that was the way Donegal would have wanted to play. I think they would want to keep maybe more, at least 2 or 3 players up. But I think any team, when you come up against that blanket defence, I think you end up having to mirror them a wee bit. until you get them crucial early lead, and then you can sort of go back to your normal system. So I don't think yesterday's was definitely how Donegal would set up. But for me, the difference with the Jim, well, there's nothing really wrong with the Donegal and the Jim McGuinness era. But the difference maybe in the Rory Gallagher era, Declan Bonner has much more forward potential than maybe Rory Gallagher was dealing with in his couple of years.
Do you think then the result yesterday and the manner and the ease of victory that Donegal notched up yesterday could be the start of a precipitous decline in the full-out blanket defence and kind of full-blown defensive tactics in Ulster football and elsewhere as well, that Donegal are showing that you can be solid at the back while scoring freely?
Yeah, look, I've heard that said a number of times. I would love it to be true. I think anybody that loves the game would prefer a more sort of natural or traditional approach to an extent. I think tactics are a good thing. It makes the game more interesting. The problem with the blanket defence is it is so damn effective. Fermanagh overturned, like, look at the teams that have been competitive this year, that if they went in a shootout, they wouldn't be. And teams, people are saying, look, surely these teams are going to learn the lesson that the blanket defence doesn't win the matches. They've won them more matches than they would have otherwise. There has been more hammerings handed out in Gaelic in this last 3 or 4 years than probably in the last 20 years combined because of the strength of the top teams. So if a team is wanting to be competitive in that, they have to be defensive. Otherwise, they're into a shootout, and they don't have the quality to win in a shootout either. So if, say, Fermanagh went to go toe-to-toe with Donegal, with Dublin, with Tyrone in an all-out shootout, people would call them naive, and rightly so, because they get wiped off the pitch. So they have to be defensive. They got them 2 goals, and if they could have prevented them, that game would have been tighter for much longer, as was the Monaghan game, and they managed to get a result. So I think it's a bit flippant for people to be saying, look, surely these teams will learn the defensive system isn't going to win. Well, the shootout system wouldn't win for them teams either, in my opinion. So the defensive system has worked on a number of occasions for teams to overturn or remain competitive against other teams. So for as long as it does that, I think it'll remain a feature of the game.
Yeah, but it's just using your available resources in a tactically astute manner. It's not like I'm wedded to this philosophy of playing crap football for the sake of playing crap football, which seems to be the kind of great philosophical debate of our time.
No, absolutely. Like, it's like looking at the World Cup or looking at soccer, it's like every team wanting to go out and play like Barcelona. You can't do that. You know, it's just not going to work for all teams. So for Gaelic and for the traditionalists to be calling for that, it's rubbish in my opinion. I think getting a balance right would be important. I think maybe some rule changes to try and stop whenever 2 teams do set up all out defensively. It is tough to watch, and because it's so effective, I always believed in the natural evolution of the game. I'm beginning to doubt that belief, because I think that the all out defensive tactics are so effective that there's no real reason for the game to evolve at the minute anyway. Apart from the top teams, but we'll continue to get some pretty poor games, and I don't think that's great for the game overall.
Like, my only counter argument to that is that if we were to experiment at least for a while with a tiered championship where there was the prospect of promotion and relegation, you can't just be a defensive team because you're trying to get out of your division, and at that point you're forced to evolve, and at that point then there's a clash of styles becomes interesting, as opposed to, well, we're just going to sit back and be a mid-tier team who's happy to maybe win 2 games in the provincial championships, 1 qualifier, and then we can all go home and play club football, which is really what we want to do anyway.
Yeah, look, you're preaching to the converted there. I think if your championship was allow them other teams to really come out and play football, I think it has to be created in a way and given enough coverage in a way to make it really viable for them players to be a real part of it. That's for a lot of deep thinking for the GA, and even when it comes to media rights, for me, the lower tier championship has to be given at least, say, 1/3 of the media rights coverage to really give that competition a profile, which maybe it hasn't seen in hurling, because the hurling championship, whilst it's brilliant at the top level, we have completely forgot about every other hurling team in the country that isn't in that top championship, and that's not ideal either. So the hurling top tier is brilliant, great to watch, but there is a huge problem with elitism in hurling, which their tiered competitions hasn't helped either. So football maybe can take some of the lessons from that, in that the tiered competition does create great games both at the top and at the middle tier. But also the middle tier has to get much more coverage and much more highlight, because the games at that level and the players at that level will be putting in as much effort, an entertainment fair whenever two evenly matched teams go together. Doesn't matter what grade of football you're playing. The entertainment whenever two evenly matched teams go together in championship, whenever there's something important on the line, will be brilliant. And if teams get on a run, the supporters will get in behind them. So I'd be absolutely of that opinion that can help a number of builds in the game. But unfortunately, at the minute, the weaker counties just aren't interested really at all.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense for them to try and build that style of play, because ultimately they end up getting hammered by the good teams. A quick word about Kerry before we let you go here, because they were obviously sensational on Saturday night, and they look to have a forward line that is as exciting and as vibrant and creative and can do anything in any style against any opponent. Obviously, we still haven't really seen them against a proper team just yet, so it's hard for us to pitch where exactly they are versus Dublin, who are the standard bearers. So what's your take on where Kerry are at the moment?
Mighty impressed. Like again, going back to just similar to Donegal, you're sort of watching footballer as a footballer, and you can see just players doing stuff of real quality that you can't fake. There's no faking it. And for Kerry, that forward line, wow, like it is just it's probably better than Dublin's forward line, and that's saying something. You know, just the talent and the variation they have. Gainey, Donoghue, Clifford, obviously three very different players, and O'Shea and Stephen O'Brien. They've so much talent and variation in their play that they're going to give lots of headaches. Their issue is, of course, defence. Cork got in for two relatively cheap goals, and Cork aren't going to be where the likes of Galway or Dublin are. So the defensive test will be there. It was great to see. As a throw man, I was delighted to see their forwards at times. I've seen numerous times their forwards surrounded Cork players, and the physicality of their tackling, it reminded me of the good old cute football scenes. It was something else to see. But yeah, Kerry, really impressive. Very exciting. I think everybody at the minute is clinging on to hope that there's some team to really bring it to Dublin. Even as a throw man, I'm excited for that Kerry side. But I think there's a number of other teams. Donegal's looking good. Galway's looking good. Tyrone, I think, are still developing and maybe can pose a bigger challenge. So there's stuff there, and hopefully the football championship's going to catch light as we head towards the Super 8.
Looks like we're on the verge of it. Enda, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Yeah.
Always great stuff from Andy McGinley giving us his thoughts there. A bit of puke football from the Kerry forwards. It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Winning puke football.
It's if you're puking and winning, that's the main thing, isn't it? It is great to see some of those performances over the course of the weekend. Like Kerry and Donegal were kind of, I think we should be more appreciative of the Dublin team to a certain extent, but I think we have become not bored, but we've become conditioned to what they can produce, those big scores and stuff like that. So we're kind of more kind of wide-eyed about the Kerry and Donegal performances over the course of the weekend, and they were three brilliant performances. But ultimately, it is just hammering home how unbelievably pointless some of these provincial championships are. Like Kerry's 80th Munster Championship win. Like, to say that it was good in the good old days, like, I mean, was the 40th provincial win celebrated that wildly? I'm not so sure. Like, Dublin racking up their biggest provincial final win of this decade. The gap is widening, and it's getting depressing, and it's just utterly pointless in terms of a competitive sense, that there's always that kind of sour taste at the end of, despite watching some of these counties put up unbelievable performances.
It's a waste of time. It's just a waste of time. It's a waste of everybody's time. It's a waste of all that preparation, and it's a waste of time because ultimately these teams could be playing each other in really meaningful games. Like, at this stage of the season, you could have Laois and Carlow playing in Croke Park for the promotion from Division 3 to Division 2, and that would be really meaningful. They would have had to be creative across the course of the championship season, and then next year they'd be in the same division as Tipperary and Kildare and Cork, and like that's in summertime they'd get to play those teams home and away, or some variation of home and away over a period of time, and you'd be like, wow, this is amazing, and we can actually legitimately stick that on as a 2 o'clock game before the 4 o'clock games, which is Division 1, and that's like fairly rudimentary stuff. But until the provincial councils decide that they no longer want to be the big dog in town, that ain't going to happen.
Never.
This tweet from Daniel J. Brady: speaking of puke football, after watching the Down performance, I predict Cavan will play out a scoreless draw and lose 1-0 after extra time. No shame in it. Then you click on Daniel's profile and it's like Cavan, Ireland. So he is actually a Cavan man, talking nothing like a bit of self-hating Cavan people on the show to get the juices flowing. Cavan didn't play puke football on Saturday. They played getting sick in your mouth on a bus, hungover as fuck, and holding it in for 70 minutes before finally having to swallow it. That's...
Oh,
that sounds like we missed a cracker there, Dan.
I wonder will Cavan... See, the thing is, Cavan Tyrone is actually kind of depressingly the most attractive fixture there in the round 3.
Come on, Mayo and Kildare.
But Mayo Kildare could be one-way traffic.
No, it'll be decent for like... It'll be longer, decent than the Cavan game.
Well, Mayo...
It'll be much higher quality football.
Like Mayo are a far superior team to Kildare. They might just not be a far superior team to them on the day.
They will be favourites, no doubt.
Like, if you look at...
Sure, Jez will barely keep the ball kicked out to them.
Mayo are going to have one hell of a battle to get out of their Super 8s group. Because A, they're going to have 2 really strong teams in it, whoever it may be, Kerry and Galway or Donegal and Dublin. But also they'll have had to play 6 times in 7 weeks to actually progress to an All-Ireland semi-final.
And they're racking up the injuries. Seamus O'Shea went off with...
no midfield.
Separated... well, Lee Keegan's not a bad midfielder. He can stick...
They've got a half-back playing as a midfielder.
I mean...
And who's your other midfielder, Aidan O'Shea?
Yeah, it's not bad.
Well, it's
Aidan O'Shea and Lee Keegan. I would take that midfield.
Ideal. It's not ideal.
Well, it means you don't have them in the half-back line.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, it's not a bad midfield. It's a bloody brilliant midfield.
That's looking at it in a very one-dimensional way. You've got to think about the knock-on impact of having that as your midfield. And it means Aidan O'Shea further away from goal and Lee Keegan not making his marauding runs up either side of the pitch or potentially from centre-back. It's hugely detrimental to Mayo's chances. And I would not be surprised to see them finish 3rd or 4th in a Super 8s group. Not surprised one bit. I think they will make it. I think they will have more scares because I think the way they'll tail off in the end of the games. If they get Roscommon in round 4 to qualifiers, Mayo are in for an almighty battle to make the Super 8s.
Yeah. Definitely. That would be like, you could see that would be the draw. And then they'd have to play like 12 times in 5 weeks, whatever it is. But equally, you can see them getting better and better as this goes on, no?
I don't think it's going to happen for them. Like, I have been one of the people preaching...
Mayo 9-4 on against Kildare.
Like, I'm very aware of what happened last year and how everybody said that they were not...
That's 3 points.
Yeah, that they were not going to make it through. And that they were not going to last in that qualifier route. But I just think with the injuries this year, every injury is more detrimental to Mayo than any of the other big boys. Far more detrimental to them than it is to a Dublin, than it is to a Kerry, than it is to a certain extent to a Donegal.
Donny Vaughan can come in, play midfield. You can stick either of the 2 lads back. Like, they will find players too. Here's the thing, these squads are big. Like, they've been having the same 35, 40 players in the same strength and conditioning programs for like 3.5, 4 years. And now suddenly players will start rounding into form where you're like, geez, you suddenly got good in the last 8 weeks there. And they get an opportunity and they get game time and they step up.
It's a big if though. I mean, it's...
Well, it's not like, it's Seamus O'Shea who's out. It's not Aidan O'Shea who's out.
I do think that the importance of Seamus O'Shea and to a lesser
hugely
extent,
important, especially in the absence of Tom Parsons.
It's huge.
And you're paring away at it, but it's not insurmountable, is my point. And that actually Mayo seem to be a team who are benefiting from the game time. Like, the O'Connors are getting better as the season goes on and they play a bit more football. And the team is getting to, like, not have to slog out training sessions and they're winning games. Like, putting up big scores.
I think if they end up in Dublin and Donegal side of the draw, they're in massive trouble. I think they'll really want to go for the Kerry and Donegal route, or the Kerry and Galway route. I think against Galway and Croke Park, it won't be in Croke Park obviously, but after Galway, it potentially loses Kerry in the
let's just talk that through. Mayo, if they're in the Dublin and Donegal side, Dublin and Donegal playing Croker, right?
Yeah.
Whose game is that? That's the neutral game for both of them.
That's the neutral game, yes.
So Dublin will have a home game, which will be probably Mayo, wouldn't it?
It's not coming. You see, we're merely in the realms of speculation here. It depends who Mayo get paired up against.
It's Monaghan. It's Mayo, Monaghan, Dublin and Donegal. What a Super 8s group, by the way. Dublin's away game would then either be in Clones or in Castlebar.
Yes, but that all depends on who they beat in the round 4 qualifiers. It's already set that Dublin will travel to either Cork or to Roscommon. Like, I can't remember which one it is. Like, for example, I know for a fact that Kerry will have to travel to Laois should Laois qualify for the Super 8s.
Because they'll travel to the beaten finalists.
Exactly, or the team that beats them. So it depends.
So if Laois get Mayo, for example, and Mayo beat Laois, then
Kerry are going to Castlebar.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. So there is a similar path set out on the other side of the draw, obviously.
Okay, yeah.
We just need to wait for the round 4 draw, which will be next week again. As I say, it's week after week after week at this point. July 14, 15 is when the Super 8 start. There is kind of like a lot of kind of tapping your finger and just kind of waiting for this thing to arrive at this point, really. And like as good as it is to see full-length matches of Donegal and Kerry on the TV and all that, and there is kind of still a novel element to that because there's so few matches in the Championship up until this point that have been televised. From a football perspective, there is still a matter of just being like, well, that was a relatively non-event of a weekend, and we need the Super 8s to arrive very quickly to save the football season, to save football in general, because it's all going to be compressed into a 5-week period. 6-7 weeks.
Well, it'll be great. Like
it will be great, but it will be fleeting.
It's a bit tantric.
Well, it will be. It will be. It will be quite quick. It will be over relatively rapidly, much like the Provincial Championship in the hurling, except the hurling comes back for a second wind when it comes to the All-Ireland series. With football, it's just kind of 6 or 7 week period, and you're done.
Okay, I want to play you this. It's Turlough O'Brien, the Carlow manager. He went down swinging after a side loss to Tyrone. Here he is speaking with Moira Trasny-Kellig after the 10-point loss on Saturday.
If you looked at the match and you saw, 10 Tyrone men behind the ball, as often as you saw them in the Carlow half, you can see how difficult it is to play, direct football. A lot of people seem to think that Carlow are playing a terrible style of football, but, some of these critics, these pundits, these ex-players, and let's be honest about it, Joe Brawley's had a right pop with the car for the last few weeks, but there's a lot of holes in Brawley's arguments, and a Brawley with holes in it isn't much use.
What kind of holes?
He's talking about, Carlow being a defensive team, but look at scores we got over the National Football League. We're one of the top scoring teams in the National Football League, one of the top goal scoring teams in the National Football League. So I think those facts stand up against any argument about how we play the game.
Possibly, except today, I think, was it 2-3 points from play, and so, the rest came from frees?
Yeah, look at why did we get frees? Lads are fouled on in, so they were scoring opportunities anyway. So you can take that wherever you like, but we're happy, we're very proud of our lads.
Absolutely, and it is, at the end of the day, people might complain, but defensive football where you're winning or at least keeping up with teams is probably better than pretty football where you're being beaten off the pitch.
We were very, very competitive. I don't know what you people are thinking but you know the rules of the game. We play within the rules of the game, so we do. And we play football to win. We're not here to entertain Joe Brawley or the likes of Joe Brawley. If he wants to come down here, Joe Brawley was forwards coach, by the way, with Antrim in 2008. They were in contention for promotion. 7 points against Waterford, 8 points against Tipperary to lose promotion from Division 4 under Joe Brawley's brilliant tutelage. So there you go now.
And you're being promoted under your tutelage, so you must be doing something right here in Carlow.
That one. And in 2008, Carlow had Waterford, the Tommy Murphy Cup, 8-10 to 7 points were beaten. We're here today playing a top team. We're both in Division 3 and we're very proud.
Zing!
Not at all prepared for the question regarding Brawley. Just a quick check on Wikipedia before doing his post-match interviews, perhaps.
Yeah,
it's a shame. Shame to see Carlow go. They have kind of railed against the common discourse about how football should be played, and they kind of railed against it in an admirable way. There's a double standard in the way we talk about this stuff that if Tyrone set up in a way that Carlow do, although it's not entirely comparable, I don't think. But if they did, there would be a lot more people saying this is awful stuff and stuff. But when it's Carlow, it's like, it's great, fair play to them. And do you know what? That double standard perhaps should exist. Because
you have this tiny resource versus this powerhouse
because
resource.
There is a double standard within the way the GAA is set up. And because the very structures that have allowed Tyrone to build on the momentum that they found when they had a great era of people has festered. And you know what? Good luck to Carlow. Good luck to them next year. I hope they come back. I hope they come back just as rigid as they were this year, because they did create some magic moments this summer. And you know what? You got to do what you got to do.
But a proper tiered system would allow Carlow to evolve next year into a team that thinks that they've got a chance of promotion to the second tier, where all of a sudden they're trying to score and they're trying to be more creative, because what they've done is they've done what every great team does. You start with your defence, you get that right, and then you go, right, now what's next?
Yeah,
which is exactly what Donegal did.
The disappointing thing from a Carlow perspective would have been that Laois game, the way they approached that, the way that was such a putrid affair in Croke Park. I guess to a certain extent that was their game plan all year, that if they were to climb their first hurdle in Leinster, they would be up against a team in Kildare that were coming down from Division 1. They would need for this to be the game plan that they worked on all summer. And if to throw that out of the window then against Laois would have been stupid.
Yeah, because if you win that Laois game, you're suddenly going to play Dublin and you're like, oh, we're going to Harlem Globetrotter our way against the Dubs.
Yeah, not a hope.
Like the patronising of Laois at half time, like, geez, this hasn't been a blowout at all, you know, because Laois have the right attitude here. It's like, well, actually, they didn't. Their defensive system was crap and didn't work at all.
Yeah, Dublin should have.
Now,
absolutely.
they also didn't get the right refereeing. Again, you see Dublin being refereed the way the All Blacks are refereed, and it's very hard for the smaller teams in any way to compete when that happens.
Yeah, like Dublin should have been a lot more ahead though come half time, and despite saying all that, and like we are going to talk about the chance of Kerry and Donegal this morning, but at the same time, Dublin have just recorded a record Leinster final win in the context of this decade, and it should have been more, and they were crap at times.
They missed a penalty. Like Laois's goalkeeper, the first goalkeeper before he went off injured, was their man of the match. Like, you know, like Dublin aren't playing well, and they're blowing teams out at the moment.
Absolutely slaughtering teams. The probability is that Dublin will be All-Ireland champions at the end of this year. The weekend has certainly opened our eyes to the possibilities of what a Kerry team can do to a poor team, just like Dublin can do, and therefore they must be on somewhat of a par. The same goes for Donegal. There is an excitement, and as it comes back to the original point that we're just sitting around waiting for the Super 8s to arrive. That's all the football season is right now, and to be honest with you, this is all just stopgap stuff. It's all just filler. That's all we're watching right now.
All killer, no filler. Oh, and that's what we are right here. Apparently, Rassie Rasmus is talking up the chances of South Africa winning the World Cup. We are, of course, meeting them in the quarterfinals, assuming we both win our groups. Like, maybe we should throw the group and finish second and get the All Blacks in the quarterfinals, because, you know, if you're going to go out at the quarterfinals, you may as well go out against the All Blacks.
Yeah.
What do you think England should do? I think England should throw that game and try and get the weaker group.
I'm not sure about that. I think the momentum thing is absolutely key. You're obviously referring to the Football World Cup in this regard.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that. They don't throw that game. There's imagine the mental kind of philosophy that you would have to instigate to go into that game and say, listen, we don't want to win, and then suddenly it's like, right lads, we're back, we want to win. Like, what is the point? It kind of comes back to the whole idea of facing the All Blacks in the Rugby World Cup. You're going to have to beat them at some point if you've got any designs on winning the World Cup. Like, if England really go into this with an inferiority complex, which is what that is, when they say to themselves, we don't fancy ourselves against a Brazil or a Germany in the quarterfinals.
No, we do. We beat you in the finals. Much better to beat you in the finals.
But
let's strategically think our way through the tournament as opposed to like, oh, we've got to play the best team now. Like, let them come through that hard quarterfinal, a couple of sendings off, some suspensions, who knows, some injuries.
The thing is, if they end up getting someone like Switzerland in the World Cup quarterfinals, they've set themselves up for a much bigger fall than a fall against a Germany or a Brazil. It's the classic England complex, and this new en vogue England complex, in keeping with that, would be to go out and try and beat Belgium. The thing is, they're not going to be favourites in that game against Belgium. They would need to cause an upset to beat them, probably. Like, I know, obviously, if you compare the results against Panama, you would say that England are the more impressive side form-wise. But when it comes to the actual players on the pitch, there's no question that Belgium are a better team.
Yeah.
And they would have to cause an upset to actually win the group. So there's a lot of ifs around here. England have to go out and try and win that game. And if they are in a poor position there, if they end up getting hockeyed off the pitch, like, I mean, that doesn't do anything for confidence.
The other thing about Dublin, just to go back to, I know we're bouncing around here, is I was looking for that in the papers. Enda McGinley has a good stat: 17 points from 18 attempts in the second half for the Dubs against Laois. In the first half, they were very wasteful. In the second half, they were just tapping over their points on a kind of metronomic rate. So they scored 125 against the better teams. Will they score 117, 116? Will they score 215, 216? Like, they're going to be involved in big game shootouts. This game against Donegal could be an all-time classic.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. That weekend is going to be just a marvellous weekend of games. And the fact is as well that it'll set up both tables quite nicely as well, in the fact that the third and fourth seeds, so to speak, the non-provincial winners will be playing each other as well. So somebody will have got an early win there who you might not expect to have got a win, or you might not have expected to have qualified from their group. So that'll set them up beautifully. But it's a good point. Like, I mean, when they create all these chances and are missing them, there's no guarantee at all that their accuracy levels are going to improve. Particularly at the stage in development that this Dublin team is at. They're close to their peak. Are they past their peak? Probably at their peak. those sort of minute details aren't going to improve much further. So it is going to be a worry for them. I'd say they got a bit of a rollicking at halftime yesterday, and it was like, and the kind of end result was them looking metronomic, as you say, and tapping balls over the bar. There's no, just because that seemed blasé doesn't mean it came from a blasé conversation at halftime. I'd say it was very much the opposite. I'd say Jim Gavin was not happy. You saw him standing up, kind of a little bit agitated after the opening 12, 13 minutes of the game yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'd say it was calm enough. I'd say that they're at this point in the evolution where they're like, these are the chances you've created, these are the chances you've scored, this is the percentage. What do we normally do? 4 or 5 times that. What are you doing differently? Do that. They looked very composed. Even when the game was a little bit close for that period of time, where Laois got it back level after they'd been kind of destroyed by the early goal. I don't know, I just thought that Dublin still looked like a team who were playing within themselves and not quite at the level of sharpness that they will be at a little bit later on. Like, there was a number of goal chances where you feel in 3 or 4 weeks' time the ball will be zipped into the far corner, Gooch style. That there'll be like we've practiced this, we've missed enough of these now, it's time for us to click and get those going. OTB AM is live with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. A couple more comments for you here. Kieran Cunningham says the whole point of the World Cup is people getting carried away. I agree. I think that the English fans should be getting completely carried away after a 6-1 win in the second round of the group stages. That's kind of why we all watch sport, right? Yeah,
it does suggest... Well, yeah, the supporters can get carried away. I don't think the camp have got overly carried away, really. I mean, Gareth Southgate's comments after the game would suggest that there is still a lot of things they want to work on, and he's not overly satisfied with how things panned out yesterday. I'm sure there's a quiet satisfaction and a quiet confidence around the camp, but of course, for the fans, it is correct to get carried away. It is a definition of a festival of football. That's what you need to be doing. Isle Cody says, the English may be slightly insufferable at the moment, but don't we still celebrate a win over them 30 years ago in the group stages? Hashtag OTB AM. We do. And rightly so. Yeah, and that's the whole point of this, right? Little King 1966 says, I wonder, is there anything in the Twitter handle, including the qualifiers? The games England have played today at the World Cup are no test for any team. They've yet to meet a good side who will test them. Belgium will be too much for them. Expect England to revert to their one-dimensional football again. I don't actually expect them to revert to their one-dimensional football because they don't have players who can... They're not designed to just hoof the ball forward. No, there is also... They don't really have players who have built up any sort of superiority complex. Really, like the golden generation, who were like, "Oh, you're so amazing, you're golden generation, keep winning Champions Leagues." Like, yeah, but we can't play together because, like, I'm Liverpool, you're Man United, and you're Chelsea. We all hate each other. Yeah, like clowns. When you think back about it, clowns. Even when you look at the sort of Manchester City element of the team, who will be the only people really who have a justifiable sense of superiority over everybody else. Like, you look at their own personal situations. I mean, not all of them are assured starters with Manchester City. Like, they're involved in a squad which is rotated quite heavily. They look around themselves in the dressing room and think, right, my position is in trouble here on a constant basis, and there is no... Pep's the big dog here, not me. Yeah, completely. So what the golden generation had was players who quite rightfully sometimes believed that they were the bee's knees, and this team are kind of on a constant railing against trying to prove themselves, constantly trying to prove to their own fans, to people from all around the world, that, you know, English football isn't something that is slapstick. And trying to disprove slapstick can be quite a good cause, and it seems to be the cause of this England team. So Enda McGinley was on a couple of minutes ago and made the point that the forward line in Kerry is probably better than Dublin's forward line, and that's saying something. Brian Kelly has responded on Twitter, but you need 9, not 3. That's the real difference. Dublin have a stronger 9. I mean, you don't need... Kerry don't only have 3, by the way. They have I wouldn't necessarily agree with the point that Dublin have 9. Or that Kerry's 9 is weaker than Dublin's. In fact, I would say that, given fitness and all that, that's patently untrue. Given the fact that Diarmuid Connolly and Bernard Brogan are out, I think that would be the definition of why Dublin have been so successful over the last couple of years, is because when you go to your 9, they're just as strong. Yeah. Whereas Dublin, it is a fact this year. Dublin are getting weaker when they start rolling out their bench. Well, the bench in the All-Ireland final would have been Brogan, Connolly and McManaman last year. So, like, you know, exactly. Like, and it won't be this year. Spoiler alert: we are going to be seeing headlines about Kieran Donaghy before the end of the year. He looks very, very good, and he is not someone that anybody's talking about at the moment. He's somebody that's hungry. They fired in a few high balls into him on Saturday, and he plucked them out of the air very, very easily. Almost like that moment at the start of the Dublin game yesterday when it looked like the route one to Kieran Kilkenny might be Dublin's modus operandi.
Kieran Kilkenny's finish, a classic hurling finish, bounce it off the ground over the goalkeeper.
Yeah,
that was class.
It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. But I'm not sure about that. I think the whole thing about the Dublin bench is.
Cormac Costello was an interesting return to. Oh, there you are. Been a while.
Yeah, constantly trying to just play his way back into the team. That there is, like, I'm not saying that Dublin don't have a squad. Of course they do. It is one of the strongest squads out there. It probably is squad-wise overall, if you include the backs and midfield, the strongest squad. But in the forwards group and the depth in the forwards, I'm starting to think that Kerry have a stronger department.
You're talking yourself into a Kerry win.
Well, that's a conversation for August.
Hello from Murphy's Irish Pub in Osaka, says Michael Carroll. Good morning to you, Michael. Good evening, konnichiwa. Hope you're well. And sure, give us an old picture of us being cast on your TV there, and we'll send you some gear all the way out to Osaka. Neil Keegan says, lads, the All Blacks have been refereed like this forever. Remember when they took Ireland's head off in the Aviva? I do. World Rugby were forced to mention it during the series, so I think changes will be made due to pressure. It needs 2 refs. Too much is happening for 1 whistle. Like, maybe too much is happening for 1 whistle, but all of the big incidents that they have had the advantage of over the last 3 weeks against France all happened when the TMO was sitting there going, that's grand. Yeah. And so, like, the whole point of the TMO is to go, you might want to have another look at that, or no, I think you're wrong on that, and here's what we're going to do.
I wonder is their train of thought when refereeing the All Blacks now something like, oh, there's something that's a little bit dodgy. Everybody's talking about the All Blacks being refereed differently. Therefore, that would dictate that I would have to give the decision against the All Blacks. But you know what? That's just converse. That's just conversation. I'm going to side with the All Blacks in this one. I think that's the inner monologue of every referee refereeing the All Blacks right now. It's kind of reverse psychology.
Well, the head of the Referees Association is a New Zealander. So. Or at least he was. Maybe he's moved on. He set up all the rules.
I'm sure he's still a New Zealander.
Yeah. Well, didn't one of the referees, the guy who loved himself more than anybody, didn't he change nationalities?
Mark Lattenberg?
No, the rugby referee, Steve Walsh, I want to say. I just want to Google that now before we... you keep the troops...
did he lose his passport in a foreign country as well and had to go to...
Steve Walsh, referee.
Like, Kevin Kilban's going to come home from Russia as a Russian citizen when he gets his passport replaced. There's like a catch-22. It's like, you were in Russia now, you have to take Russian passport.
Steve Walsh, international referee, born in New Zealand, moved to Australia, obviously decided, screw you, I think Australia's better.
I would do the same thing. Would you rather be an Aussie or a Kiwi? Both similarly odious in your review? No, I'm just preempting what you were going to say.
No, I mean, Australia's a lot going for it. Like, so does New Zealand.
But like as a rugby fan of either county or country?
Oh, I'd much prefer to be a Wallabies fan because, you know, the game isn't rigged in their favour.
But I would quite enjoy being a fan and going
knowing
into...
that you're going to win. Yeah, it's great. I mean, you've been a Kerry fan all your life. So, like, the majority of times that you've gone to watch games, you're like, yeah, we're going to win, it's no big deal. Well, this isn't actually that important to us.
We didn't necessarily have the officials on our side. Remember 1982, Ger?
No, what happened?
There was a push. And the ref didn't give it as a free out.
Because no Kerry lads ever pushed anybody when the ball was coming in.
No, never. Absolutely clean as a whistle.
Do you remember Paddy poking the head off Denny Allen and it was like a talking to as opposed to anything else?
Yeah, but he got punched first. he was not the instigator in that manner.
All right, what's coming up on World Cup Daily?
Well, it's permutations left, right and centre, Ger, because Group A and Group B wrap up a little bit later on. Is there going to be a shock? Is there a potential that Russia get beaten? That would be the big shock of the day, really, if Uruguay were to take something off them. To see how A and B turns out, it'll be Raf in studio with me. We'll have Leon Blanche on from Boyle Sports and John from Moscow once again.
Joe is back from 7 o'clock tonight on the radio, Monday Night Rugby, World Cup updates, and of course a whole lot more from 7 o'clock on News Talk. As ever, if you've missed anything, check out offtheball.com. That's where we put all of our content. And remember to subscribe to our feeds on youtube.com/offtheball. And then anytime some goodness is coming your way, we'll ping you a little notice and you'll be good to go. That's it. Good luck.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products.